All right, let's dive in. Today we're looking at President Biden's pardon of his son, Hunter. Lots to unpack here. We've got articles from AP, Reuters, The Atlantic, even the Financial Times chiming in on this one. This pardon? Well, it's causing quite a stir, wouldn't you say?
It really is. You're not kidding. Strong opinions from all sides. To make sense of it all, we've got to look at Hunter Biden's legal situation, what Joe Biden has said in the past, and then, of course, the political fallout.
Yeah, the political side of this is huge, isn't it? But let's start with Hunter. AP covered his convictions, federal felony gun charges, tax evasion, the whole 9 yards. He pled guilty. And the trials, well, they brought a lot of personal stuff to light. His addiction, those overseas business deals, and yeah, some other things that weren't so flattering.
Right, right. And it's important to think about the penalties he was looking at. Helps us understand why this pardon is such a big deal. Reuters had a piece on how Hunter's lawyers claimed he was being selectively prosecuted because of, well, who his dad
Oh,
is.
I remember that. Definitely a controversial argument.
And it seems to resonate with people. The Financial Times pointed to a Monmouth University poll, and you know what they found. A significant chunk of voters think politics were at play in the prosecution.
Really? Wow. Makes you think, doesn't it?
Yeah,
How much of this is actually about legal stuff versus plain old politics?
for sure. Which brings us to Joe Biden and what he said before. He promised over and over not to get involved with the justice system or pardon his son. Both The Atlantic and The Washington Post have quotes where he and his press secretary, Karine Jean-Pierre, flat out deny a pardon would happen. And now here we are. Seems kind of contradictory, no?
Yeah, it definitely raises questions. AP even suggested that this pardon might look like he's going back on those pledges to be all about the rule of law and whatnot. That kind of thing that could really hurt how people see him, his whole legacy.
And then there's the timing of it all. Just weeks before Biden's out and Trump's back in, the Washington Post pointed out Republicans jumped right on it, didn't they? Congressman James Comer, for example, he had some strong words about it.
Yep.
And the Financial Times even quoted Stephen Chung, a spokesperson for Trump, saying this whole thing just adds fuel to the fire, makes people think the justice system is being used as a weapon.
So let's zoom out for a second. Have other presidents pardoned family, historically speaking?
They have. The Washington Post reminded us of a few examples. Bill Clinton pardoned his brother, and Trump pardoned Jared Kushner's father. But this situation with Biden, all the politics tied up in it, really puts a spotlight on the ethics of a president maybe trying to protect family from facing the music.
Makes you think, doesn't it? Could this set a precedent for other presidents down the line?
It's definitely a possibility. It raises some serious questions about accountability at the very top.
It really does. We're talking about potentially changing how we view the presidency as a whole. It's not just about Hunter Biden anymore.
It really changes things, yeah. And it's interesting, this, pardon, it brings up a question people have been debating forever. How do you balance, personal feelings with the immense power of being president?
That's a really good point. It's not just legal stuff. It's about the human side of it all. The Washington Post, they touched on that. They said maybe it was just a father reacting to years of, well, family tragedies. They brought up the car crash, the one that killed Hunter's mother and sister, and then later losing his brother, Beau.
Right. Those tragedies, they definitely make things more complicated. Some people might say those losses, along with Hunter's, very public struggles with addiction, they make a case for compassion being more important than, well, concerns about a president's power.
I can see that, but hold on. Didn't the Washington Post also say that Biden always insisted on staying out of the legal stuff? Like he was really committed to not interfering.
Yeah, they did. And that's what makes this pardon so fascinating. It seems like he's doing the opposite of what he said. Makes it look like he used his power to step in, even if it was because he was worried about his son.
It feels like this throws a wrench in the whole idea of fairness in the justice system.
Sure.
Like if a president can pardon family, does that make people trust the system less?
That's the question, isn't it? And the Financial Times, they went there. They mentioned that Monmouth poll, the one that found a lot of voters already thought Hunter was being prosecuted for political reasons. This pardon might just make that feeling worse.
So it's not just about Hunter Biden's legal problems. It's about potentially shaking people's faith in one of the most important parts of our democracy.
Exactly. And that brings us back to those precedents we were talking about. What will other presidents do now? Well, they think they can use pardons for personal reasons, too. Where's the line between doing someone a favor and doing your job?
And how will people react? Will they see it as compassion or as straight up abuse of power?
Hard to say for sure. But we can look back at how other presidents have handled similar situations. Remember Clinton's pardon of his brother?
Mhm.
And Trump pardoning Jared Kushner's dad. Both times it raised eyebrows, got people wondering about how presidents should use their power.
So this isn't a new problem. It's like Biden's pardon is just the latest chapter in this debate about how presidents use their power.
Exactly. And with Trump back in office soon, it's probably going to get even more heated. The Washington Post highlighted some pretty strong opinions from both sides. Democrats, some are defending Biden, others are saying it's a bad precedent.
And the Republicans, like we said, they're already using this to say the Bidens are a crime family, like Comer said.
Right. And those accusations, true or not, they're not going away, especially with Trump back in charge. Pardon, it could become a big weapon in the political battles ahead.
It seems like this whole thing has just made the existing political divisions even worse.
It has. And it shows how, politics today, it's often about feelings and what people already believe, not really understanding the facts.
So where do we go from here?
Yeah.
What does this mean for the presidency, the rule of law, all of that?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And as citizens, we've got to figure that out.
Reuters included parts of Hunter Biden's own statement. He said he takes responsibility for his mistakes, wants to help others with addiction. It's easy to get lost in the politics, but we can't forget there's a real person in the middle of all this.
Absolutely. It's easy to forget about the human side when you're talking about laws and politics.
We've covered a lot of ground here, haven't we? The legal side, the political side, even ethical questions. We've looked back at history and thought about the future.
But what does this mean for everyday people just trying to make sense of it all?
That's something we'll talk about more in the last part of our deep dive. We'll look at how this pardon affects public trust, the balance of power, and what this all means for future presidential pardons.
This whole thing, it really makes you think about what we want from our leaders.
Yeah.
What do you think this says about, being a father versus being president? How do you balance that? It's got to be tough, right? Every president has probably thought about it. And we've seen this struggle play out, throughout history. The Atlantic, they really came down hard on Biden, called it unpardonable hypocrisy even. They're saying this pardon, it makes people trust the government less, and it sets a bad example.
Yeah.
Especially after all those promises Biden made about, bringing back respect for the law and all that.
Yeah, all those campaign speeches.
Yeah.
It does make you wonder, how can you say you're all about the law and then turn around and, bend it for your own son? Kind of sends a mixed message.
It does, and that mixed message, it could have big consequences down the line. The Financial Times brought up a good point about public trust. Remember that Monmouth poll? The one where a lot of people already thought Hunter was being prosecuted because of politics? Well, they said this pardon could just make that feeling stronger, make people even more cynical about whether the justice system is fair.
So it's not just a family thing anymore. We're talking about potentially shaking people's faith in the whole system. That's huge.
It is huge. And it makes you think, what does this mean for presidents in the future? Will they think it's okay to use pardons for personal reasons? Where do you draw the line between, helping someone out and abusing your power?
It's a real mess, isn't it?
Yeah.
This one decision, it's opened up this Pandora's box of issues: presidential power, accountability, public trust. What even is justice? All of that.
Exactly. It's like looking through a prism, seeing all these different angles of the same problem. And we need to keep talking about it, not just about Hunter Biden, but about the bigger principles. What does it mean for someone at the top to be held accountable? How do we make sure justice is fair for everyone, no matter who they're related to? These are things we need to figure out as a country.
It's a lot to process, that's for sure. What's your main takeaway from all of this? What stands out to you the most?
I think what gets me is how fragile public trust is. In a democracy, our institutions only work if people believe they're fair and honest. When stuff like this happens, stuff that looks like someone's breaking the rules, it chips away at that trust. People start to wonder if the whole system is rigged.
That's a powerful point, and it brings us back to those long-term consequences we were talking about. This isn't just about Hunter Biden. It's about how people see the president, how they talk about politics, even what the presidency will be like in the future. We might not see those consequences right away, but they could stick around for a long time.
They could, and that's why it's so important to really think about these issues, to see things from different sides, and to have honest conversations about the kind of country we want to live in. This deep dive, hopefully it's given you something to think about, some new ways to look at presidential power, and a better understanding of the challenges we're facing.
I think you nailed it. And everyone listening will leave you with this. If this pardon could change how people see the justice system and the president, like we've been talking about, what does that mean for pardons in general? Should there be stricter rules, more transparency, maybe even rethink what they're even for? It's something to think about because it gets at the heart of how we balance fairness, mercy, and accountability in a democracy. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll see you next time.